Berserk Deluxe Edition 4. We've officially entered the midpoint of the released Berserk series, and I'm kind of actually glad to say that this was one of the weaker bits of the series so far for me, and I say that because it was kind of just becoming exhausting to constantly praise Berserk, and that's not to say there aren't really good segments within the chapters I'm going to review here, but I definitely also have some clear criticisms to point at, which make this review to me feel a bit more well-rounded. So without any further ado, let's continue the Berserk summarization/review journey. Now, I've had some comments asking me to, at the beginning, let you know what chapters and sections I'm going to be getting through, because people want to be sure they're not going to suddenly get past where I am in the series, so just making it abundantly clear up front, we are going from Sparks from a Sword Tip to the end of Festival's Eve, Chapter 2. Saying that for some reason made me feel like I'm like sitting down to do like a little Christmas read-along with the family. Read this to your family at Christmas. See how it goes. Let me know. Report back to me, send an email. I expect them in December. So the story picks up after Casca and Guts had their romantic encounter and finally acknowledged the feelings that have been building between them for so long. And we see the interesting points of this dynamic further fleshed out, where Casca is getting into her insecurities around Guts saying no, he doesn't plan on staying with the Band of the Hawk, and she gets rather angry with him. But Guts, actually really making me proud of my boy, says, hey, come with me, because I think he's beginning to see that Casca under Griffith's shadow isn't exactly the best thing for her, and in addition to that, he clearly has very strong emotions for Casca and just doesn't want to be alone anymore. This is really big growth. This is someone who didn't even like being touched by other people due to the horrible molestations that have happened to him, now acknowledging, one, he loves this person, he wants them to be with him, actually letting the physical touch occur and taking comfort in it. The level of actual representation of mental growth, breakthrough, and trauma recognition continues to be my favorite part of Berserk, hands down. We also see what Guts has been getting up to during this time, and apparently he was by a waterfall training with an old blacksmith who I immediately love. If you just make an old man smith things, they're my favorite person. And he would like chop logs as they come down from a waterfall. But a brief criticism of Berserk, they're often just like cutting to these different scenes without much transition. Like we're straight up just seeing Casca and Guts together, and she's like, what have you been doing? Turn the page, it's showing us. But it didn't say that, and they're in a similar environment, and all I see is suddenly Guts is chopping logs in a river, and I'm like, oh, okay, I have to take a moment to be like, okay, we're changing to this scene, rather than having any kind of establishing shot. Like, literally the first thing is just someone on top of a hill yelling, here it comes. So I figured that meant there's someone yelling this to Guts and Casca. It's just a little bit of clunkiness, and I'm nitpicking a bit, but nitpicks are still criticism, so let me do it. Although my favorite bit of comedy for this whole section was seeing Guts laying in the river next to a bunch of chopped logs he managed to get as they came down the waterfall, and he broke his sword doing this, and he just looks like he's so happy. Like, ah, I chopped the logs. I don't even care my sword is broken. I love me chopping some logs. And after his sword is fixed by this blacksmith, we get some inner monologue from Guts, and it turns out he's actually communicating a lot of this to Casca. And he's talking about his own destiny, his own life, his own purpose, what he's trying to find. And I can't show you much more of the conversation between him and Casca because they are naked still. Good for them. Intimacy is wonderful. And what I love here is also a really strong moment of growth for Casca, where Guts is just kind of going, me, and his own destiny and purpose, and Casca just calls him out. It is like, all of this is about you. What about me, the person you've confessed feelings for? You just want to up and abandon us again? And this is the point where Guts is like, I want you to come with me. But I like that Casca got that moment of like, dude, other people are important in your life. You have relationships. You can't just go off on your own like it's not going to affect others. And then, yeah, that's when Guts is like, you want to dig down in the woods on the regular? Then, thankfully, a cut with context, we get a panel at the bottom of their conversation saying 3 days prior, which, hey, I appreciate the actual transition here. And it shows a gargantuan monster in the woods, a snake-like being, and some woodsmen collectively shitting their pants as they watch it over the tree line. It's big. We're getting into some kaijus. And then we also transition from this to seeing the Behelit, so obviously, yes, something awful is brewing, and this is where my own theory began to formulate for what exactly is going to happen for Griffith. Thank you again, Berserk community, for not letting anything be spoiled for me. At the end of this video, I am going to do my big prediction for what's about to happen next, something I have not done yet before for Berserk, and you get to judge me whether or not I'm right or wrong. Please don't tell me in the comments down below. That would majorly suck. Now we get the first chapter of Infiltrating Windham, where we're actually following Griffith as he is kind of going over some of his childhood, the deeper psychology of how he's been set on this mission, and the really intense emotions he feels for Guts. And I do think it's a form of love. Like, he is passionately obsessed with Guts, and it's not exactly in a good way. It's like this very, I wanted to control you, I wanted to easily categorize you like the rest, but instead, you've become this extreme source of passion for me, someone who I can't keep logical around, and I think this is really one of those great insights from Mura where he's showing you, like, there are people out there who this is what love is for them. This hyper-controlling, obsessive, you serve a purpose for me, and it bothers me that I'm having a hard time putting you in there. That's love for him. And again, the Griffith Defenders, all right, okay. And he's even just in the dark apparently shouting Guts to himself, showing that yes, his mental condition is definitely deteriorated in his extended imprisonment. That's a good word. But we see a brick is pushed from the wall, and he's not hallucinating as these little monsters come on out and are like, of us the unforgiven. And they touch him and transport him into what looks like a dark dimension. We cut from here back to the Band of the Hawk as they are preparing, now that Guts has returned, for a rescue mission for Griffith. At this point, I immediately had the thought, because we are seeing all the main players from the Band of the Hawk saddle up for this mission. Hey, what about your leadership? You're kind of putting everyone who has a claim to lead this group in this mission. What if it goes horribly wrong? Like, that was one of my immediate criticisms here of, like, you're smarter than this, Band of the Hawk. You don't put your entire command structure on the rescue mission. That is more likely to fail than succeed. My assumption at this point would be they're kind of just like, look, if this fails, the band's done, and everyone should go out on their own and just try and make it. But I had to put in that assumption rather than it being told to me, and I don't know if it's right or not.
Correction, possibly, on my part, because I'm making the assumption that just because they're the characters we know best, that means they're the next in line for command within the Band of the Hawk. I actually think I could have been wrong there. That may have been an assumption that I was just completely misguided on, though I don't know all these people's ranks and things memorized like I'm sure some fans do at this point. So let me know in the comments down below. I'm actually curious about that. And I don't want to remove it, though, from the video, because I feel like that would be disingenuous to feel like, you know, that was my actual thought in that time. But I've come around on it. So now you're seeing the full experience of the Berserk review.
But we see 3 days later they have arrived at the city where Griffith is being held prisoner, and we get another scene where I'm like, you're better than that, Berserk, because they're going through this graveyard and they're looking for a secret passageway into the castle, and Guts is like, you can't just find a secret passageway into the castle by just wandering through a graveyard. That's stupid. And then immediately, of course, because joke, someone's like, I found it, boop, and the thing opens that allows them a passage in. And this actually gets addressed in a minute, but for me reading, I was like, this is kind of dumb. I don't like this. And when it was addressed, I was like, all right, I get it, but at the same time, I just didn't like this joke. It felt forced and not how this conversation would go for these very clearly liking to plan out a dangerous rescue mission type characters. But Guts addresses my criticism from before, and he's like, Casca, maybe it's not the best idea for you to come too, because you're the leader here, and what if it goes wrong? Casca, actually, I believe totally in line with her character, just tells Guts, no, I am going on this, and you're only saying this because you're worried about me. And I'm like, you're probably right, but he makes a good point. These things are not mutually exclusive, and at least send back Jude or something. He can take charge once this is over, but like, why is everyone who's important coming on this mission? But now we get into Infiltrating Windham Chapter 2, and they have made their way through the secret passageway and actually come out into a, what's the word? Mausoleum. That's the word. That's a good word, too. A lot of good words today. And at this point, they meet up with Princess Charlotte, who obviously told them where the secret passage was. It's just like, You don't know what's going to happen on a rescue mission. Tell Guts every step before you just surprise him with some cloaked figures in a mausoleum. It's Guts. He's been known to cut people first and ask questions never. I mean, the guy even starts drawing his sword, and Casca has to be like...
So this is today's epic prank. We're not gonna tell Guts that we have a secret passage into the castle, and he's going to be totally shocked.
Aren't we traveling with him for 3 days?
That's why it's so funny. 3 full days, and we're not gonna tell him.
So this is so we can surprise him with the secret passage?
There'll be like 3 whole seconds where he doesn't know how we have that.
But what if he kills them?
You mean the guy who's been known to swing faster than eyesight? What if he's surprised by the cloaked figures and kills them before we can identify them as the princess who's helping him on the inside? There's no way that's gonna happen. In fact, I guarantee it.
So clearly Princess Charlotte actually told them where the secret passage was and everything. It felt like a cheap way to build a joke for the reader. I don't know. I just feel like Berserk should be better than that. Fucking sue me. And here we have Casca's kind of internal conflict come to the forefront again with her feelings towards Griffith. And I really like how she is starting to actually conquer them, because she just logically recognizes she's still jealous of this princess due to the attention she gets from Griffith, but she's registering and like categorizing as like, that's something I need to get over. And I really enjoy seeing her kind of become this more self-actualized, has her own agency and independence person, and it feels like she's managing to accomplish it in a way that's very different than Guts. So they're actually on similar arcs paralleling each other, but it's a different experience for each. And that's really well executed. Both of them were absolutely under this cult leader's control, and it's ironic seeing them break away from him as they are rescuing him. There's some narrative irony here that I'm really finding satisfying. But then we get Princess Charlotte being the stupid, annoying, easily controlled, stubborn person that she is. She's quickly become one of my least favorite characters in Berserk, because she's like, I want to come with you and leave this kingdom, which is understandable for her because her father is obviously the creep of all creeps and I hate him. But when they're like, that's not a good idea because that means the entire kingdom's armies would come after us, we'd be hunted across the world, it would never stop, and that would spell our end, Princess Charlotte just starts screaming that she's going to, and so they have to like cover her mouth and be like, fine, oh my god, we'll take you as a hostage, stop screaming. It's almost like it's nighttime, and this is a rescue mission. You psycho. There's also some really nice moments between Guts and Casca here, where not only was Guts clearly like expressing like, you know, maybe Casca don't come here because I'm worried about you, but we also see Casca just openly seeking comfort in Guts by like holding onto his cloak at one point, which is like a really small thing. But for characters who are this hard, characters who are this jaded, that small amount of public intimacy is huge. And we even have Guts at one point joking if he should like hold her hand, and it's like, oh my god, these people who are so traumatized, they're breaking down the walls and becoming human. It makes me so happy. Getting back to Charlotte's hissy fit, after Casca's like, fine, if Griffith agrees, we'll take you with us. She again has one of those faces she gives whenever she's happy where she goes, ah! Those are always kind of just out of place for me, but in a way that's genuinely funny. It's like there's this super dark rescue mission. We could be caught at any moment. We just had to pay off some guards. Oh my god, any second could be the death of us. And there's Princess Charlotte like, but we have a understandable hiccup though, because obviously these people have not reached their peak. They have not gotten over all their insecurities. And Casca starts to tell Guts like, hey, it's hard for me to hear Princess Charlotte talk about Griffith like this. It's making me feel these things. And Guts, understandably, not correctly, but understandably with insecurities, has a kind of negative reaction to this because, you know, Griffith is someone who he still looks up to, still sees as better than himself, is someone he's trying to achieve a goal of being better than, and hearing Casca, who he's just formed this bond with, admit these feelings and jealousies, drives a knife into his heart. If he was smarter, if he was more mature, he could conquer that and be like, okay, we'll help you get over it and acknowledge this is Casca actually trying to move through these things, but he's not provided that level of clarity yet. Frickin' of course he's not. And then she tries to apologize, and she actually like regrets saying it, thinking, what have I done? And Guts snaps, like I said, now's not the time to be talking about that stuff. Which, yeah, his reaction's not great. he's kind of right in a way, because no, it's not the time to be talking about these things. You're in the middle of a hunt, and this is actually one of my criticisms of this chapter. They're all standing around talking a lot for trying to do a stealth sneak rescue mission in a place where everyone definitely is going to know their face. Well, apparently the guards didn't, even though the Band of the Hawk is like super wanted in this kingdom. I don't know. But again, it's just a very mature, understandable interaction to be happening. Not mature in Guts parts, but a mature from the author's standpoint, developing this relationship. And it's the core and the heart of why I actually find these pages still really enjoyable, despite them lending to some of my criticisms. Berserk is just... But as they finally break into the building that's actually the prison holding Griffith, we cut back to the Band of the Hawk. And we see Rickert go to get some water, and he's stunned to see an elf, which I love Berserk's depictions of elves. Very cool. But what the elf seems to foreshadow is the attack of an enemy raid, as Rickert is hearing some really, I assume the translation of these is not safe noises. Let's just call them not safe noises. And he comes back moments later to the Band of the Hawk, and all he sees is this all-consuming shadow with fires inside. And the fire's light is like the waves from the Wheel of Time. It's just totally consumed by this darkness. And because everyone's gone so fast, he can't process what's going on. He's like, did they hear the raid coming and run? What's happening? But then he sees the hanging figure of one of his band members, and they just say, run, before the monster of all monsters of disgustingness rolls on out of the shadow. And here we actually see him pretty much paralyzed with fear as he realizes almost entirely the Band of the Hawk has been consumed. And we see underneath this beast's belly exactly that, and that adorable looking elf is looking on like, my plan, which, you know, that's disturbing. But they are saved at the last moment by that Skuld rider we saw in the last review actually speak to Guts and give some kind of warning, show up, and start saying withdraw to the beast before him. And the elf actually gives like a childish towards this rider, which I like that the personality within the supernatural is somewhat human. It feels like, you know, ancient mythology a little bit, how much they personified the deities around them, and that we're seeing these demonic deities given a similar treatment. But as the rider pulls back, we see Rickert is pretty much going insane with what they've seen, and they're pretty much in total despair as Griffith is about to return, but instead what seems to be happening is the entire Band of the Hawk is done. And the last thing we see at the end of Festival's Eve, Chapter 2, is that Skuld rider sitting on a branch top, taking off into the night like a demonic Santa Claus? Is this Berserk's Saint Nicholas? If so, did not see that coming. That is pretty much the build-up, it seems, to where we are finally going to get to the rescue of Griffith. And that is a really good place to stop. Obviously, the next review next week is going to be a doozy, and I'm glad we got all this setup out of the way. Again, I think the emotional development of the characters I am watching here is some of the best I have ever come across in fiction. I think Guts and Casca especially, and Griffith, let's throw him in there as well, have been captivating from the go of just being able to enamor me as a reader for their emotional states, and it's so well done that any other weakness in my mind is essentially just painted over. I really do not mind almost any other flaws in the story because of just Mura's incredible understanding of where these people are and where they are headed. That being said, I still need to acknowledge some of these issues. For me, there is a continued insistence of humor, that some of which I did not actually even acknowledge in my review here, that feels a bit out of place. There's one specific joke with Casca being sore after her night with Guts that I was just like, come on. Like, there's the goofy face and stuff, and it's a usage of facial expressions that I'm sure for some readers, you know, humor is completely subjective, absolutely lands. But for me, it's just kind of making me groan. And structurally, I found this to be very much so falling into a criticism I've had of Berserk before, where Mura just wants his narrative to continue along so he can tell his emotional story. And so there's certain things, like maybe planning out, understanding how this rescue plan came into be, that I'm just not getting. And I understand for less narrative-focused readers, not that big a deal, and I don't blame you at all. Berserk is a hyper emotion and character focused story, but I still would like those elements. And with what's going on with Griffith, I hope the tide changes a bit there, because I really want to go back and watch what's happened to him in his time in captivity more in detail than just these bits of flashes we're getting of him. That being said, overall, I still really like this segment, and I would give it a 7 out of 10. Let's go ahead and get into the predictions. So again, you all have been magnificent when it comes to handling spoilers within Berserk, and I appreciate that immensely. So here is where I am sitting as of now. We're in predictions territory. No idea if this is right or wrong. The Band of the Hawk is not dead. They have been consumed and are going to be changed, transformed into some form of army for Griffith. I don't think this is necessarily the most interesting narrative choice, but it's predictable and something that needs to be done so that he has something alongside him once he is whatever he turned into at the beginning of the Black Swordsman, or at the end of the Black Swordsman. There were enough moments here with Casca where she is kind of finally reaching that next stage, where she is really getting a point of comfort, that I'm realizing Berserk is not going to let her stay there. She is being set up as someone to be destroyed so that Guts can regress emotionally to the person we met in the Black Swordsman. And that kind of sucks, because I love her character and I want to see her continue on, but I cannot tell what's going to exactly happen next, though it will be Griffith's fault, and that will send Guts on the trajectory we've seen him, aimed directly towards the monster that is being formed like a missile. The rest of the Band of the Hawk is going to be consumed as well, and be the other twisted Hellraiser-esque beings we saw alongside Griffith, and that's why the narrative decided to bring them all along, even though it doesn't really make sense to take the entire upper echelon of your mercenary crew and send them in this way. Again, it's narrative service in character, which is fine. It just, I can point out, like, it's a little weird you're doing this. Princess Charlotte, going to die. I 100% think Griffith is actually just going to kill her, because in some weird misplaced way, he views her as responsible now for what happened to him, even though it's entirely his fault. As much as being tortured can be your fault, it's actually the king's fault for, being an awful person, but it is what it is.
Brave stance, I know, but torture is bad.
When they find Griffith, he's already going to have been partially transformed. Require him getting his hands on the Behelit again to transform the rest of the way, and I don't know entirely how it's going to happen. Now, that rider that showed up last minute is going to be a different faction of evil. I think Griffith is trying to be like a new Prince of Darkness, hence why they're referring to him as Prince, and this rider is going to be serving an existing one. I'm not stupid or foolish enough to think this rider's like a good person or a good demon. That's not going to exist in Berserk, but it could be an ally or a tool used by Guts, once everyone else involved in the situation is dead, to help him, aid him, get what he needs to actually stand a chance against whatever Griffith is turning into. I think the next few chapters are going to be absolutely heartbreaking, and we're going to see Guts get the damage we've seen on him in the Black Swordsman as well as maybe his sword, because I know he gets a much bigger sword, and they've been emphasizing the one he has currently with like a bit of a bond with it, so it would also be another beat for him to lose that and be representative of how broken he's going to feel after all these things are gone around him. That is my prediction. I feel like quite a few of them are safe, but I could be completely off base, because narratively this story has surprised me quite a few times. Let me know what you thought of this review in the comments down below, and like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreons, Aaron and Eric Montalvo. I hope you guys are having a great one. Thanks.